Hey guys, my name is Masa Karami and I did my presentation on cognitive rehabilitation for patients with Alzheimer's disease. The reason I chose this topic was because my grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's for many years before she passed away earlier this year, and it's just a topic that I would really like to learn more about, along with new ways being tested to treat the disease. So my topic addresses scientific methods used in psychology, learning and memory, personality, age and affect, and cognition. So starting from the basics, Alzheimer's is an irreversible, progressive brain disorder that slowly destroys memory, thinking skills, and eventually the ability to carry out simple tasks. People who suffer from late-onset Alzheimer's typically show symptoms during their mid-60s, but early onset, even though it is rare, it's shown to occur around the age of 30. So according to the Alzheimer's Association, there are an estimated 5.5 million people ages 65 and older with the disease and 200,000 individuals under the age of 65 who would be considered to have early onset Alzheimer's. So many of you might already know each part of the brain that Alzheimer's affects, but for those who don't, let's get into it. The area of the brain that's almost always damaged first is the hippocampus. So damage to this area makes it harder for a person to learn new information or form new memories. The amygdala is typically affected later. Damage to this area means that a person may react to a place or situation based on their emotions rather than a logical way. The left hemisphere is affected in a way that is linked with semantic memory and language, making it harder for a person to find the right word for something. If the occipital lobe is damaged, recognizing familiar faces and objects may become harder. The right parietal lobe brings difficulty in judging three-dimensional distances such as stairs. Damage often spreads to the frontal lobe towards the end, but it's the biggest part of the brain that's affected because it affects decision-making, planning, organizing, judgment, and impulse control. So now that we know the different areas of the brain that Alzheimer's affects, it's also important to have some general knowledge of the complications that arise from these areas being damaged. So one of the main complications, or I guess you could say characteristics of a brain with Alzheimer's, are amyloid plaques. So a protein called beta amyloid is found in all brains. In a healthy brain, it's supposed to break down and be eliminated, but with Alzheimer's, abnormal levels of the protein clump together and form plaques that collect between neurons and disrupt cell function. So another complication that arises are neurofibrillary tangles. These are abnormal clusters of a protein called tau that collect inside neurons. So in healthy neurons, tau normally binds to microtubules, which guide nutrients from the cell body to the axon and dendrites. But again, with Alzheimer's, the chemical changes in the brain, they cause tau to separate from the microtubules and stick to other tau molecules that they eventually form tangles inside the neurons and disrupt cell communication. So getting back to the actual topic of my presentation, cognitive therapy or rehabilitation can be traced back to the early 1960s, but using it for Alzheimer's has been a fairly recent approach. Just some background on cognitive rehabilitation. It's a program to help brain-injured or otherwise cognitively impaired individuals improve normal functioning or compensate for cognitive defects. So this type of therapy, it builds on strategies involving memory, executive functions, and activity planning. It is shown to improve functioning in individuals who've suffered a stroke, and also there's another branch of the therapy called cognitive remediation therapy that's been used to treat schizophrenia, ADHD, and major depressive disorder. So because the use of cognitive rehabilitation is very new, there aren't a lot of articles or studies published that talk about the benefits, but of the limited trials done, there were some indications of potential benefits of the therapy and improving the lives of individuals with mild Alzheimer's disease. One of the studies that was conducted in 2011 was single-blind and controlled, and it was conducted at a university's hospital memory facility. So the study consisted of 41 patients, 25 were randomly assigned to an experimental group, and 16 to a control group. The experimental group met for 6.5 hours twice a week and took part in 24 total sessions. So the program consisted of activities that included cognitive rehab, computer-assisted cognitive training, speech therapy, and cognitive stimulation. So according to the results, the patients from the control group showed statistically significant decreases in cognition and attention, but the experimental group showed increases in quality of life and decreases in depressive symptoms. So I guess even though the results showed promise, there need to be more well-designed studies with a larger population to get definitive evidence. So with all that being said, let's get to the quiz. So the question is, what are amyloid plaques? A, tangles that form in neurons because of Alzheimer's disease. B, naturally occurring protein in the brain that is supposed to be broken down and eliminated. C, a part of the brain that is responsible for semantic association. Or D, a type of medication currently being tested to reduce the memory loss brought about by Alzheimer's. So if you guessed B, then congratulations, you've been listening. And finally, here are the sites that I used if you